it's because I was just getting into talking about the film and things like that. Just kidding. But this is a movie like I was saying, okay, so let's do a quick recap. 28 Years Later is a sequel, legacy sequel of sorts to 28 Days Later. It kind of uses 28 Weeks Later here and there and references it. I can't talk today, y'all. I'm kind of tired. I went to a convention and it was a lot of walking. I have some pretty cool clips that I'm going to be posting on the channel, so stay tuned for that. But I just got back from a convention. I did watch this movie 2 days ago. I watched it on Thursday, preview night, and the theater was packed. And I tell you, when I left that theater, everybody, okay, when I got into the theater, pretty live crowd, right? Everybody was excited. 28 Years Later was here, a sequel to a film franchise that has very, very beloved, and one that I think really redefined the zombie genre and everything about it. And yes, they're not technically zombies, they're infected, but they do call them zombies in the movie, which Alex Garland does talk about that as well. But I think it really redefined that genre. If it wasn't for 28 Days Later, we wouldn't have things like The Walking Dead and so on and so forth. But I do think that the hype for this movie was at an alarming rate. And I talked about it before. This movie was getting too hype. People were excited with the first trailer that came out. And I always think that's always going to set up failure because people have expectations. I always think this way: people make up a movie in their minds and think what it should be and should do, and then when it doesn't do that, and you set up so long and so many days of thinking about this movie, and it does something completely different, like 20 years later does, then you run into disappointment, you get mad, you get pissed, you really don't like the movie. And that happens, and it's normal. It's happened to me several times before, but I really did enjoy 28 Years Later. I loved a lot of what Danny Boyle and Alex Garland did with it, even that ending, which was insanity, and I want to talk about it as well. I already did a couple videos talking about it and what it potentially sets up, and I'm going to do a couple more videos as well. So let me fix this camera. I'm like holding it on a tripod right now because I don't have nowhere to set it. So with that, I want to say 20 Years Later, not the film I expected. I definitely thought what the film could have been or was going to do. Surprised me a lot. The whole thing with Aaron Taylor Johnson as well. Like, the movie really is split into parts, and you can feel it at times as well. The editing for sure was great also. I think what Danny Boyle did with the B-roll footage and the sort of very stylized kills in the movie was interesting. I thought the Alpha was a very, like, menacing character for sure. There's a lot to talk about the Alpha as well. And I really do love the additions of the slow lows and all of these different types of infector, right? It expanded the world, which I think a legacy sequel should do. It should broaden and strengthen the story we already have, which from coming from 28 Days Later into weeks and now into years, I think this film achieves that. It really makes us see the world in a different light. And one of the things I really thought about was that this movie is taking place 28 years later, 3 decades after the rage virus came. So the movie was not going to feel like 28 Days Later in no way whatsoever. Like, this is a movie where people have learned about the virus, they've moved on, they've started new lives. There's a whole lot of things that are going to be affecting them differently than, let's say, Jim in 28 Days Later or in 28 Weeks Later, because things are different. And 6 months after the infection and rage virus came through, things were different than what they were in days. So, of course, years and years on, things are going to look a lot different. And you see it in a society that has moved on from an initial outbreak, something and all of that. Of course, they're different from the first month where there's uncertainty. There's a feeling of, I don't know what's next. I don't know how this works or where this ends. So, of course, the people are going to be different. And I'm going to get into spoilers and things, of course, in this video for 28 years. So if you've not watched it, this is not the video for you. Check out a review I'll be posting tomorrow. But I do think that what we see at the end of this film, especially with the character of Jimmy, who is played by Jack O'Connell, showcases a way that humanity copes, and that is by coping in very bad ways. I think what we see from Jimmy is a person that has found refuge or sort of comfort in what they know at the time or think is the way, right? And with the character of Jimmy, Jimmy is modeled after Jimmy Savile in the way he looks, and we also have the gang, which is kind of modeled with the Teletubbies as well. And that's something we knew about Jimmy. Right before the rage virus, the infection, all that outbreak happened, he was watching Teletubbies with his cousins, and he was just having a time of sorts, like a kid would. And this thing came, and now it's caused them to sort of have to grow up, to become this new person now. When he was in the church and he received the crucifix from the Father, he pretty much saw that as something like he is destined of sorts. And I feel like Jimmy has this sort of complex now where he feels he is quote unquote the chosen one of sorts, right? He has to sort of go forward. And, this is me speculating on what Jimmy and the character will be, because Jimmy, the character of Jack O'Connell, is going to be a huge part of the Bone Temple, as Danny Boyle has said. This next film is going to focus on that. Alex Garland says that if 28 years later is about the nature of family, then 28 years later, the Bone Temple is about the nature of evil, and that we're going to find out what exactly happened to Jimmy during that whole outbreak and infection as well. So I think that Danny Boyle sort of introducing them, the Jimmy Gang, until the very last minute, which I don't think is really more of the ending. The ending to me for 20 years later is when Spike finishes that letter to his mother. What comes after that is more like an epilogue in a book, right? It sort of leaves you with what just happened, and it's like a cliffhanger. It really is meant to be a cliffhanger because this is a first part to a two-part story. They did film the Bone Temple back to back with this one, which the Bone Temple will be coming out in January. So I'm definitely excited to see what that's going to feel and look like for sure. So we'll see what that is. But I appreciate 20 years later for trying to do something different, for not wanting to be the same movie that 28 Days Later was already, and just wanting to be unique, right? And you can never fault, I think, a filmmaker or anybody for that. They want to make the film that's going to push and push. And I think that Danny Boyle sort of gave a tease of what he could do if he just did the sequel everybody expected, which was that first part with Aaron Taylor Johnson as Jamie and Spike going out into the mainland and fighting off these new infected. But I think he also wanted to showcase something different in this world. And I think that that was really something that added a lot more, especially with Spike. And Spike really had a lot of growing up in this movie, not just from what he learned from his father in that first part of the film, but also what he learned from his mother in the second part, and also Dr. Ian Kelson. I really love the character of Raph Fiennes, so I really do hope we get more time with Raph as Dr. Ian Kelson in the Bone Temple. And, we don't know if it's going to be more of a prequel or what, but it definitely does have to go back in time if we're going to get more about what was happening with Jimmy at the time and why he became the way he was and what this Jimmy Gang is really up to. So, overall, I love the ending. I think the ending really sets up great things for the upcoming franchise, and that alarm is just going off. Sorry about that, y'all. And I think that that definitely is what I expected a legacy sequel to do, is build upon the legacy, not give us the same things we've gotten before, and try to go in a direction that's bold, that's new, that's daring. And 28 years does that. I think it really does it so well. And I want to discuss more of the themes, because there's a lot of things that Alex Garland and Danny Boyle talk about with indoctrination and sort of selective memory of the past, the good old days, quote unquote. And that's what 28 years is really about. It's sort of about how people can sort of go into a direction of what they think should be the way to go forward from things that happened in the past, but they don't look at the whole picture. They pick and cherry pick whatever they think worked. But if you don't know your past, you're destined to like uh, relive it. And I'm excited for it. So we'll definitely talk more about it. So stay tuned. I need to charge my phone, so sorry about that. I gotta end the live, but I appreciate if you were on here. I am going to be making a video on Dr. Ian Kelson and the Alpha tomorrow, and where exactly do they go into the next film, as well as Jim, played by Cillian Murphy, who will be a big part of the third film. Stay tuned for that. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and